Trina, and this is my April reading wrap-up. All the books that I read this month were included in that introduction so that you can have an overview of the reviews you can expect me to be doing in this video. And there are timestamps in the description in case there is one book review that you want to jump straight to. And I also always put Goodreads links to all the books that I talk about in my videos in the description so that you can easily find those books. And I'm going to jump right into my TBR check-in now. So this month I planned to read these 4 books, and I did terribly this month. I only had 4 books on my TBR and I read 2 of these. Yeah, I don't really have a lot of excuses for that. I was just in a really weird reading mood this month, and also my copy of The Circle, like the day after I made my TBR video, a bunch of people got in line for the book at my library and I had to turn it back in. So I just have not been able to keep a copy of The Circle in my hands. So I haven't had a chance to read 2 of these books yet, but I still really do want to read them eventually. This month I read a total of 9 things. 4 of them were print books, 4 of them were audiobooks, and the other one was a comic bind-up. I'll get into reviewing these books now, and like always, I am going from my lower end of my rating spectrum to my highest end, finishing up with my favorite book of the month. So first of all, in April, I read Saga Volume 7, written by Brian K. Vaughan and illustrated by Fiona Staples. This is a comic series, and this is a sci-fi fantasy. It's set in space, and it is about this intergalactic war that is happening, and these 2 people from different sides of the war have fallen in love and run away together, and they've had a child together. This is really frowned upon by both sides of this war, so both of their races are hunting them down. It's just a really epic space fantasy, and I do enjoy the story of this series. There is a lot of graphic nudity, very graphic nudity, so heads up on that. This volume itself, I just felt like not very much happened. We spent this entire volume like very stationary in one place. A long amount of time happened with not much story to really show for it, so I just didn't feel like this one was the most exciting of the volumes in this series. Next up, also at 3 stars, I read The Thousandth Floor by Katharine McGee. This is a YA sci-fi book that reads very much like a contemporary. It is set about 100 years in the future where New York City is no longer a sprawling city. Instead, they have built one tower and everyone in New York lives in this tower. The higher up in the tower that you live, the richer you are, the more popular you are. This book has 5 different points of view. So there are 4 female characters and 1 male character, and I actually thought that it was pretty difficult a lot of times to keep all 4 of the female characters separate, especially 3 of them. They're all these girls that live on the upper floors. They're really into parties, they're friends with each other, they're in a lot of scenes together, and I just like could not keep up with which character was which one. Like their voices and their story arcs didn't really seem that distinct at times. And then around the time I got about halfway through it, I was like, okay, I'm invested now. I really want to know what these people's secrets are and stuff. But this is definitely a story that is all about secrets and lies and drama and frenemies. I feel like you would like this one if you like Sarah Shepard's books, like the Pretty Little Liars series, and I have seen a ton of reviews comparing this one to Gossip Girl, but I've never read or seen Gossip Girl, so I can't really tell you that. I did enjoy how all these characters' storylines wove together and like the amount of blackmailing that went on here. Like there was just a lot of secrets, so there is a bit of intrigue to this one. There were 2 books that I gave 3.5 stars to this month, and the first of those was The Seafarer's Kiss by Julia Ember. This is a YA Little Mermaid retelling inspired by Norse mythology. And in it, our main character is a mermaid, and she lives in this underwater kingdom, and they kind of have this idea for the life that she should be leading, but she's not really interested in their plan. She doesn't really want to mate with the merman that everyone expects her to be with, and instead she ends up falling in love with a human girl who is a survivor from a recent shipwreck. The main character in this one is bisexual, and that is Own Voice's representation. The main character is also fat, so there is some fat rep in it, but I myself wasn't a big fan of some wording of some of the fat rep. And there is also a non-binary side character that uses they, them pronouns. This book actually does not come out until May 4th, but I was sent an early copy of it in exchange for an honest review. I do already have a full review video up on this book, which is non-spoiler. It is a review and a discussion if you guys want to hear more of my thoughts. But my brief overview of this is that I thought it was a fantastic retelling. It was true to the original story while still leaving a lot of room for surprises. It twists the retelling a little bit. What I was not not a fan of was the romance, because there is physical violence portrayed between the two main love interests that kind of isn't really addressed. The other book that I rated 3.5 stars this month was The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. This is a YA contemporary about a young girl who she had a brain tumor, and at 10 years old she underwent an operation to remove the tumor, but it left her with a form of amnesia. She remembers everything up until the moment she had that surgery, so she remembers being 10 years old, but now she is 17 and she has not made a new memory in the past 7 years. But then one morning she wakes up and she has a new memory from the night before. She can remember being 17 now, and she remembers kissing her best friend's boyfriend. And Flora thinks that kissing him healed her brain and her memory. This book is also not coming out until May, but I did read it early because Penguin Teen kindly sent me a copy of this one so that I can do a video about it. So I will be having a review and a themed video about this book coming up soon. But my overall thoughts on this book are that at first I was very put off by that idea of the love interest curing her. That is something that is mentioned in the book summary on the book jacket, but I will say that the book makes a point in the end to show Flora that that is not the case. I also had a hard time getting into the writing style because it's very simplistic and it's very repetitive, but as the book went on, again, I noticed that the writing style started to improve, and so I think that this was really done in that specific style to portray the mental state of Flora. What I really liked about this book is that there was a sense of urgency and mystery that was portrayed through the writing, and that is something that ended up really gripping me and just propelling me through the book. Like, I stayed up way too late reading this book because I could not put it down. I do want to give you guys a heads up for some content that is included. I would argue that there is an abusive parental situation happening here, and there are also a couple of scenes of self-harm either on page or Flora thinking about it. So just a heads up for that content. But overall, I just enjoyed this book a lot more than I initially thought that I was going to, so 3.5 stars feels like a good fit for this one for me. There were 4 books that I gave a 4-star rating to this month. First is The Princess Diarist by Carrie Fisher. This is one of Carrie Fisher's memoirs. She just recently passed away, like just a few months after this book came out, and that was actually the reason that kind of prompted me to pick this book up. I was just really sad about it, and I listened to this one on audio because it was a memoir, and she does narrate this audiobook herself. And in this book, she is just reflecting on her time working on the first Star Wars film. She talks about just herself before the role of Princess Leia, during the role of Princess Leia, and after that, and how Leia really affected her life. She talks about how much she appreciates this character. Like so many other people, I grew up on Star Wars, and Princess Leia was a really great female role model in film for me, so that was why I was interested in this one, since it is specifically talking about her experience with Star Wars. It was difficult to listen to this one at some points because Carrie often wonders what people will think of her after she's dead, and so with that being so fresh, it was just kind of difficult to read at times. But I do think that this one would be one I would suggest if you enjoy celebrity memoirs or if you really love Star Wars. I also read Given to the Sea by Mindy McGinnis, which is a YA fantasy about a world in which everyone lives on an island and the ocean level is rising. And the way that this culture combats the ocean is they believe that if they feed a girl to the sea, it will be appeased and it will leave the rest of them alone. So they sacrifice one life to save the rest of the world. Now, the girls who are being thrown into the ocean are from one bloodline, so they have to produce an heir before they can become the sacrifice. And this generation's girl that is given has not yet had a child. The ocean seems like it's getting angrier, and all the people on this island are getting much more restless. They're starting to go to war in order to control the safest spot on land. I liked the world and the world building. I had no trouble getting into this. In fact, I was reading it thinking, wow, that was really easy to get into this. And you know, it's Mindy McGinnis's first time writing fantasy, so that was something that I was kind of wondering about. This is definitely something that deals with much more adult, darker themes, because Mindy is a writer who always deals with the darker themes of humanity. The main thing that she is tackling in this book is rape culture, and I think that if you enjoyed her book, The Female of the Species, you'll also enjoy this one. Also, because this one deals with rape culture, there is one scene of an attempted rape. There are definitely some scenes that were tough to read, and I do think that this book will make you kind of uncomfortable, so it really just depends on what you're looking for in a fantasy. If you are a fan of romantic fantasies with a lot of fantasy creatures and magical systems, systems, this is not really going to be the series for you. But if you like things that are less magic based and more about the politics, then I think that this one will appeal to you. I am planning to do a full review video on this book because I've read everything by Mindy McGinnis, and a lot of you guys have asked me to please review this one, so I will be putting that up soon. So stay tuned for that to see more of my thoughts on Given to the Sea. Next, I read Famous in Love by Serle, which is a YA contemporary romance. This one is about a girl in a high school drama class who wants to be an actress, and she goes and auditions in an open casting call for the lead role in this big movie that's being made that's adapting a set of books that are like bestsellers. They have this huge fandom around them. She's a totally inexperienced actress, but she ends up landing the lead role, and she is thrust into fame overnight. And as she starts filming the movie, she finds herself getting involved in some of the romances that her book character is involved in the story. I heard about this one because it's being adapted into a TV show. So this is a book about a book being adapted into a movie, and this is all being adapted into an actual TV show. So it feels like book to movie adaptation inception is happening here. But I heard about this one because Freeform is starting the TV series of Famous in Love based on this book. And I recognize the name Serle because I have read another of her books before and I did enjoy it. And I've always been meaning to read something else by her. So I thought this is a good opportunity. I can read the book and then watch the show. And I have seen the first 2 episodes of the TV show now, and I did enjoy them. I liked this a lot more than I thought I was going to. It is very fluffy, cheesy romance. I just got to a point where I was like addicted and I had to know what was going to happen. I felt really wrapped up in this story for a little while, so I did enjoy this one overall. And my other 4-star read of the month was Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Colthurst. This is a YA fantasy romance. It is about a princess who has been betrothed to the prince of a neighboring kingdom, and when it's time for them to meet, she goes to his kingdom and meets him, but she ends up falling in love with his sister instead. So she's bisexual, and that is Own Voices representation, and this is a romance between 2 princesses. I do feel like the world building in this book was maybe a tad bit underdeveloped because I didn't always understand who the different nations were and who was allied with who, but I was really intrigued by this story and it had a lot of things I really liked about it. The romance was good, there's a really solid mystery that's happening throughout the book, which I did not expect, and that really kept me interested in the plot. I did enjoy the setting, like the world itself, even though maybe some of the background and politics could have been fleshed out, but I really enjoyed the characters. I really loved that the 2 princess characters are kind of opposites, like they balance off each other really well. And our main character is a nerdy princess. She loves studying things and knowing facts, and she loves being involved in like their politics. Another thing I liked about this world was that it was not a heteronormative world. A lot of the characters were in like same-sex relationships or they liked multiple genders, and nobody really batted an eye at that. Like that was just kind of the norm. But I really enjoyed this book. I think some of the plot and some of the world building felt a little bit rushed, but I loved the characters, the romance, and the mystery, so I definitely want to read more by this author. And lastly, my favorite book of the month was Waking Gods by Sylvain Neuvel. This is the sequel to Sleeping Giants, and this is an adult science fiction series about people who have uncovered these giant statues, and when they put them all together, it makes up one human-looking figure, but it isn't quite human, and so they're trying to figure out what this thing is, what does it do, and where did it come from. This story is told in an interview format. Like everything in the book is pretty much all audio files. You have some radio news reports, some audio interviews that have been recorded between characters, some audio of personal diaries that the characters have recorded. So this series actually works very well in the audiobook format if you want to listen to it instead. It is narrated by a full cast, and I just think it is so enjoyable. It is very similar to the Illuminae series in that relation, but the book itself is not as highly formatted visually, and the stories are completely different, of course. This was absolutely my favorite read of the month. I just got to the point where I was like 95% done with the book, and I just had to put it down because I was not ready for it to be over. I love spending time in this world and with these characters and trying to figure out what is going on, and Sylvain Neuvel he always writes these really weird plot twists right at the end of each of the books, and you're like, what how did that happen? And then you have to wait for the next book, and just the next book is going to be so totally different because things have changed now. I can't wait for the sequel. I just geek out over this series. I loved it so much. I just highly recommend this series, and definitely the audiobook version of it. So those are my reviews of the 9 books that I read in April. If you have any question about the content or just anything about these books that I did not cover in these reviews, please ask me that down below and I will answer you there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!